Story 1. My mom still brags about how I learned to read at age 3. The truth is, I just memorized my favorite storybook after she read it to me hundreds of times. I was basically reciting it from memory while pretending to read the words. Story 2. In grade school, I got extremely high scores on the standardized tests of the 1960s. I was able to see grammar errors, illogical sequences, and unrealistic opinions and fill in the other circles with my number 2 pencil, even if I had no clue what the question or answers meant. I heard for years about my supposed evilness for not applying myself, and that my brain was going to rot in my head. I was just an average kid who could remember the test-taking skills taught to me by my tutor. I had a tutor when I was unable to attend school for a year for medical reasons. Story 3. My cooking is just about simple, high-quality ingredients, simple techniques, and beautiful presentation. Quality ingredients don't need much, and they don't have to be expensive. Pre-made things, processed food, ridiculous cooking techniques, and adding unnecessary flavorings cover up real flavors. I don't mean not to use spices. Spices are your friend, but use quality pepper, paprika, cinnamon, cumin, and real vanilla. You actually need less of higher quality spices because they are more potent. Story 4. Sometimes, when helping fellow students with something at the information technology education I study at, they are baffled by what I know and what I did. I simply just read the instructions we get. They don't. Story 5. In junior high, the computer had just come out. I'm showing my age here. In class, the teacher was explaining what a mouse was. There was a game up, and I just started pressing random keys. I broke the code, and it started printing everything. My teacher thought I was amazing. Story 6. As a kid, I knew how to uninstall unnecessary software and clean up the startup programs on all my family's Windows computers. They run and boot faster. Basic computer maintenance is genius to some people. Story 7. Recently, I have become good at spotting patterns and routines and can more or less get to know a person based on their routine. This means I can often notice when a person is getting sick or is having a difficult time. Many doctors, paramedics, and police have praised me for this, especially after I have called ambulances for family members and neighbors when their routines changed or became longer. They keep saying I must be really smart to notice such small things, but in reality, I am not smarter than average. I just notice unusual things. Story 8. I found drawers on the verge and told everyone I was going to make them into a bookcase. Everyone thought I was so creative, a genius for thinking outside the box. And then I finished the bookcase. Many people realized I was not a genius, including me. Story 9. I'm not great in math, but my geometry teacher taught me a multiplication trick that, for some reason, stuck in my head over the years. I got a chance to use it when working at a technology firm and in a meeting that included a bunch of top-level executives, including the chief executive officer, chief financial officer, and others. The chief executive officer was brainstorming how many rows of data a certain result would require and asked out loud, "How much is 25 times 25? Instinctively, I blurted out, 625, immediately. The whole room was taken aback, and someone confirmed on their phone. I definitely got some sort of genius credit, despite being mathematically inept at most things. The trick is easy but has limited use. When multiplying any number that ends in 5 by itself, you take the first number, multiply it by the next number in sequence, and then add 25 to the end. So, 25 times 25 is 2 times 3 equals 6, and then add 25 for 625. 35 times 35 is 3 times 4 equals 12, and then add 25 for 1,225. 45 times 45 is 4 times 5 equals 20, and then add 25 for 2,025, and so on. Story 10. Don't have a home phone. Everyone has mobile phones, but my significant other's youngest has his phone on silent all the time. Tried to ring home, but obviously no answer. So I went on the Ring app, rang the front doorbell, which made the dogs go nuts, but made him answer the door thinking someone was there. Then I spoke to him via the Ring doorbell to tell him to answer his phone. The other half thought I was a genius. Story 11. I was once in line at a food court Subway in college, and I overheard the conversation between the sandwich artists. I don't remember now what they were talking about, but one of them was explaining that they had attempted something and failed. The other responded with the age-old expression, "Shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land among the stars." Their conversation ended as that second employee got busy with something or other, but I said to the first, I've always thought that's an odd expression, because the moon is so much closer than the stars. He laughed. "Huh. Oh yeah," he replied, pausing before tilting his head. "Well, not all of them, though." My brow raised. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, there's some stars between us and the moon." After what must have just been the look of befuddlement on my face, I explained to him that, well, no, actually, stars are very, very big, and even small ones are very bright, and if there were a star between us and the moon, then neither us nor the moon would still be here at all. "Oh, wow. You know a lot about this stuff," he said. "Are you an astronomy major?" Internally slack-jawed, I said no, ordered a sandwich, walked away, and then proceeded to remember this guy at least once a week since. Story 12. I learned big words from shows as a child, and when I used them, people thought I was clever. I also unironically loved Franz Kafka. Apparently, that's not normal when you're 12. I just thought he was cool, and we both had daddy issues. Story 13, basically just anything involving technology. The vast majority of society is completely technically inept. I am at university, and the vast majority of people just have zero idea about any technology beyond the basic stuff on their phones or laptops. Story 14. I could play multiple musical instruments without lessons or anything. People thought I was a savant, but it was just a natural talent that I had no control over. Story 15. Honestly, just correctly pronouncing complicated words. Another little trick. Instead of apples and bananas, say fruit. Instead of gasoline and would say fuel. Basically, going up one level of abstraction makes you sound smarter. Story 16. When I was 4 or 5, I had a bike with a dynamo that powered a light. The faster the bike rode, the brighter the light. At some point, I realized that it would be brilliant if cars had a similar dynamo to save energy when braking and convert it to electricity. This was in the 1990s. I reinvented the alternator and hybrid regenerative braking. Story 17. I don't know if this counts, but I told my coworker about how mimicking waves with your hand will make squirrels come towards you. I was called a druid after that until I left the job. Story 18. I'm autistic and know a lot about my special interests, one of which happens to be history, so in school people thought knowing a lot meant being smart. I don't think I'm stupid, but I also don't think I'm a genius by any means. Story 19. I got every question right on Pop Master in the car once. Nobody was there, but I told anyone who would listen, and I can guarantee they all thought, wow, the man's a genius, and told all their friends and family about me. Story 20. Writing something on a friend's computer, I used Control, Shift, and the left arrow to highlight a couple of words. My friend told me, that is some clever hacking stuff. Learn your keyboard shortcuts, kids. Story 21. What made people think you were a genius, but in reality you were not a genius? One very simple thing, read the manual. I stepped over people in my career path like they were dead bodies littered on the floor simply because they never bothered to read the manual. All of them fake it till you make it frauds. Story 22. Because I built a computer at the age of 12 in the year 2000 and was always the IT wizard. I'm actually an idiot and gave up my information technology career to become a merchant seaman. Story 23. I'm a stereotypical nerd who loves Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, and solving Rubik's Cubes. I also make straight A's in my college classes. Everyone treats me like I'm a genius, but I feel like an idiot who's just barely squeezing by. Story 24. I have a strong interest in learning about literature, animals, and history, and at some point I was good at some forms of mathematics. I was constantly on the honor roll before. People knew I could create things well, mostly write, paint, and cook. Then college happened, and that did not end well in my first semester. At most, I'm just slightly above average or average, I guess. Story 25. Being in a technology program at school. I'm doing very poorly only in the first year, but people think it makes me smart. It really doesn't. I chose technology because humanities is genuinely difficult for me. I guess I'm just not very smart. Story 26. High school history teacher here. The genius student I had didn't open the textbook once, took very few notes, never came to review sessions, yet sat attentively and answered every question I asked aloud correctly. He showed up to all my tests with just a pencil and would be the first to finish nearly every time. The only question he ever got wrong was a bonus one in my first month of teaching that asked the students to correctly spell my last name, as the majority never called me anything but Miss. Fantastic all-around kid too. Athlete in the musicals, social, loved by all. Got into every college he applied for. Story 27. I was in an ethics discussion in college, and Cuba was the topic. I mentioned that I knew the pre-revolutionary leader was named Batista, and the class looked at me in astonishment. Story 28. I could read by the time I was 2 years old. All through elementary school, I flew past my other classmates and ended up skipping a grade. This turned out to be a terrible idea. Parents, just let your kids be the best second graders. Many things that people struggle to do came very easily to me. People had high hopes for me, but there were a couple of things that happened. One, I plateaued at a point where things didn't come effortlessly to me anymore. But by then, I literally had no idea how to work to learn something. For years, I had been accustomed to just getting it, and now suddenly things didn't make sense right away. Cue extreme crisis of self-confidence. Second, it came back to bite me that all my life I had been praised for being smart. The lesson was, you're a good reader because you're so smart. You can do anything you want because you're so smart. As soon as I encountered something that didn't click right away, I just assumed those were things I couldn't do and would never be able to do. I didn't understand why a couple of my classmates, whom I had seen quite literally eating glue the school year prior, were now outperforming me in math. It never occurred to me at all that I could work to learn something I didn't know or gain a skill I didn't have. The lessons I take from this are: 1. Just because you're a gifted child doesn't mean you're going to be a gifted adult. You might have the intellectual abilities of a 15-year-old when you're 7, but it's likely that when you hit 15, you'll be roughly equal to your peers, outliers notwithstanding. Parents do their kids a great disservice by praising innate abilities instead of praising the result of diligent effort. I don't have any kids and never will, but if I did, I would figure out some way to connect a kid's achievements to their hard work, even if I know they breezed through it without a care in the world. Story 29. I was a straight A student whose school didn't offer anything above an A. I even got into college early. The reality was that I was a huge geek and loved learning, so it was rewarding to get a good grade and validation for my neediness. Simple as that. Story 30. Once in office, I fixed the office Wi-Fi by just rebooting the router. Everyone thought I was some tech person, but all I did was unplug it, wait 10 seconds, and plug it back in. Story 31. I'm really good at estimating costs and doing simple math for cost per item breakdowns and quickly. There have been plenty of times when my wife's roommates would bring home produce, when she was still just my girlfriend, and be excited for the great deals they got. Look at this bag of mangoes I got. It was only $5.25 for 14 of them. You should be excited. That's only like 38 cents per mango. They'd be amazed I just instantly got close to the approximation. It was 37.5 cents per mango. In reality, I'm maybe slightly above average in intelligence, but after being broke for most of my adult life, knowing how to quickly assess the value of goods is a great trait to have. Story 32. I was one of those gifted and talented kids of the late 1970s and was expected to be an absolute success. Little did they know attention deficit hyperactivity disorder had different plans, and I couldn't do math in my head. Story 33. Fixing a VCR back in the 1990s at a conference when I was one of the young ones. I knew which button to push when it malfunctioned in the way that it did, and all the older people thought I was brilliant. Come to think of it, I only knew which button to push in that situation because my 10-year-old son had figured it out, and I saw him doing it. Story 34. In 4th grade, the teacher gave us a pop quiz about American history that included the question, who killed Alexander Hamilton? This was at the beginning of the colonial era unit, and we had not covered this information. But I knew the answer because of this commercial. Story 35. I cheated once on a science test in high school. Afterwards, for a couple of tests, people would whisper to me asking for answers. Needless to say, they were very surprised when I responded by saying I don't know in every subsequent exam. Story 36. As an artist, people throw around words like genius and natural talent. In reality, I've been drawing and painting for more than 40 years. You get good at things when you do them thousands of times, and the more you create, the more creative you get. They don't see all of the horrible failures that are painted over or destroyed or just never finished because they are terrible. Story 37. When I first started at a new company, I made a code change that caused a job to run slowly. People soon noticed the job was running slowly and started complaining. I took a look and fixed it so the job ran quickly again. The company chief executive officer personally thanked me. No one knew I was the cause. They only knew I was the genius who fixed it. Story 38. I really impressed the front desk ladies at my community college by scoring 104 on a math placement test as an incoming high school senior. They were expecting a score around 70. I am not a math genius. I just doubled up on math classes my junior year. The score I needed to take the next course was 100, so my 104 was an average score for someone who had finished the high school math courses.